Welcome to Making Good Habits Stick. In this brief presentation, I'm going to walk you through the basic steps of how we change habits. This model is based upon over 20 years of research with tens of thousands of people who have successfully changed habits. Why is it worthwhile to become more conscious of how we change? Because most often, success in our lives comes from repeated action. In other words, a habit. None of what I will tell you, however, is new information. Every single one of us has successfully changed habits. So instead of this information being something you've never heard before, it is information that you already know at some level. It's just been unconscious. As a result, you'll find each of these stages of change familiar. You will recognize how you have passed through them before, and in fact are probably in the midst of going through one or more of them right at this moment. After all, we are always changing. But by becoming fully aware of how we all go through change, we can use it to much greater advantage. Galileo said that our only source for learning is that which is within us already. I'm just going to give you ways to organize what you already know. First of all, habits come in three forms. Most of us think almost exclusively of habits as behaviors. But behind every single habit of visible action are habits of thought and habits of emotion. Behavioral habits are really just the tip of the iceberg. And the three forms of habit come as a package. One of the reasons that habit change appears to be so difficult, and one of the reasons that explains why we so often fail at it, is because we only look at the behavioral habit and look for behavioral solutions, when what we need to be doing is gaining control over the cognitive and emotional habits that accompany every behavioral habit. So I'm going to give you a framework to use as a mental map for all of your habit changes, whether or not they are habits of action, thought, or feeling. The theory is that when we change, we progress through the same 5 stages in the same order and, on average, over similar periods of time. Now, we could spend days talking about the stages of change, but we won't here. Just know that there is much to learn, and there has been decades of research using this model with tens of thousands of subjects. The stages are not based on how things should be, but on how people actually succeed in changing habits. That's why it will feel familiar to you. You've worked through these stages dozens of times on your own, just not consciously. So, the first stage is, what problem? The second stage is, oh, that problem. The third stage, ready, set. The fourth stage, go. And the fifth and last stage is keep the fire alive. Let me briefly describe each. The first stage means that we don't see much of a reason to do anything differently than how we are doing things now. Why bother? Things are fine. Contentment is the opposite of motivation. Makes sense, right? If we don't see anything wrong, why would we consider doing something different than we are now? Then sometimes, quite suddenly, sometimes over years, we see that in reality, things are not the way they should be. There is something we don't like about the status quo. There is something that may be better than what we're doing right now. Now, that being said, we can, and often do, stay stuck in this stage for years. Have you been trying to lose 10 pounds for 10 years? Well, there's your evidence. But we often reach a point when we say to ourselves, enough is enough. And it's not just we say it to ourselves, we feel inside of us deeply that enough is enough. And when that happens, we start to gather ourselves. We start considering what might have to be done to actually promote and produce a change in our lives. We actually start planning. We do different things with our time than we've been doing. And we look at dates and relationships and activities and all of our schedules. We get concrete about what's going on in our lives, because if the change doesn't show up in your calendar, then I'll guarantee you the change isn't going to show up in your life. And then we pull the string. This is the go stage. People who know us usually see we are doing new things, going new places, and living with a new plan of some kind. Then, after some period of time, the new behavior, thought, or feeling begins to settle in. We've reconfigured our lives, or parts of our lives anyway, around what was new, so that it begins not to feel new anymore. It begins to blend into the background. It becomes just the way we now do things. It moves from the unusual to the routine. Which is the most important stage? My vote is not the go stage, the action stage, where almost every other program than HabitShift points you. I see the readiness stage as the most important stage. Why? Because, as you know, you don't change for good until you're ready. And doing a good job of getting ready means that the go stage, the new behavior, the new thought, the new feeling, the new part, is a whole lot easier to do, like falling off a log. You've heard people say, once I was ready to quit smoking, it was easy. Once I was ready to go on the diet, it was easy. That's why I put my money on getting ready. It's the physiological, behavioral, cognitive, and emotional business of readiness where the key to successful change is found. And the problem is that when we try to change before we are ready, we add to our feelings of powerlessness, our feeling that we will never get this right. So it's important to do it right as soon as possible. Rarely do any of us make the change the first time around. You need to have some peace around that. Very few people change habits the first time through. But the takeaway here is to hold off on the go stage and concentrate on the readiness stage. That'll work for most of us. Get your ducks in a row first. Gather your resources around you. Prepare for the battle ahead. Then launch the habit change itself, and it will become so much easier to do than what you've ever known possible. And on that note, I'll close. I would encourage you to think about how this model applies in your life, or in your organization for that matter. It applies equally to both. Try explaining the stages to someone in the next 48 hours. Bring them to this website and talk them through, because that'll lock it in for you. And come back again. In a future talk, I'll unbundle readiness for you. Thanks for your time today and attention. Feel free to email me with any questions you may have.